Okay, I think we're going to get started now. Great, so hi everybody, I am Angela Hoteling, Program Director at New York League of Conservation Voters. Thank you for joining this virtual coalition launch. Today, Children's Health Day. This is the official launch of our New York City Coalition for Electric School Buses. Many of us with children or with little ones in our lives are thinking a lot lately about how to keep kids healthy, especially as schools reopen and new COVID protocols are implemented and everything gets going. There are certainly a lot of conversations we could have right now about how to keep kids safe and healthy at school. But today we are going to talk about keeping children healthy on their way to school, particularly on the school bus. In New York City, on a typical year, there are more than 10,000 school buses driving 8,000 routes to get kids to and from school. Most of these buses run on diesel fuel, which contains polluting chemicals that harms our kids' health and our environment. So that's why we're all here today, right? Because we want this to change and because we want a healthier alternative for our kids. And we think electrifying school buses is the best solution. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, what the coalition is doing and how you can get involved. But first, we want to introduce our coalition members. Before we begin, I just have a couple housekeeping notes. We want you to know that we are recording this so that we can share it with others later. We also will have time for Q&A at the end of the event. So to submit a question, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and submit a question there. Also, keep an eye out in the chat because we will be posting a couple things in there throughout the event. So with all that being said, let's begin, let's get going. And I'm very excited to introduce my colleague, Carlos, who's going to introduce the League.
Thank you, Angela. Again, my name is Carlos. The New York League of Conservation Voters Education Fund educates New Yorkers on environmental issues and prepares them to be effective advocates for the environment. In 2017, we launched the Clean Buses for Healthy Niños campaign, a statewide initiative to advance school bus electrification. We are committed to this campaign because it is a children's health issue, an equity issue, and a climate issue. We're asking NYC to protect and invest in our children by electrifying its school bus fleet. We are excited to be a founding member of this coalition.
Great, and next up is Jenny from NYC.
Hello everyone, New York Lawyers for the Public Interest pursues equality and justice for all New Yorkers by confronting bias and barriers based on race, poverty, disability, and immigration status. Our environmental justice program works to eliminate the unfair burden of environmental hazards borne by low-income communities and communities of color, and to create a more equitable and sustainable society. Part of creating a more equitable and sustainable city is by prioritizing the health and safety of children as well as communities as a whole through the electrification of school buses.
Great, thank you. And next up is Anthony from North Brooklyn Neighbors.
Thanks. North Brooklyn Neighbors advances community-based solutions on issues of public space and the environment through activism, education, and collaboration to create a more just, healthy, and safe place to live and work. Since 1994, we've worked to combat pollution and legacy toxins, to improve community health in Williamsburg and Greenpoint. In communities like ours, with high rates of asthma, a clean bus fleet will deeply impact local air quality and make it easier for everyone to breathe. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Next up is Georgie from 350 Brooklyn.
Hello, everyone. I'm Georgie with 350 Brooklyn City Action Committee. Thank you all for coming. 350 Brooklyn opposes new fossil fuel infrastructure and supports building out renewable energy by educating and activating our community. The 350 Brooklyn City Action Committee knows that without all of our interventions, school buses and their noxious fumes will once again run the streets on every school day. With public funds coming online soon to fund the transition to clean buses, this campaign is good for kids, and once it is in place, the whole community will breathe easier. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Next up is Sonal from We Act.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sonal Jessel, Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at We Act for Environmental Justice. We Act's mission is to build healthy communities by ensuring that people of color and/or low-income residents participate meaningfully in the creation of sound and fair environmental health and protection policies and practices. This includes ensuring our children are able to live, play, and learn in a clean environment. Diesel school buses are a significant source of air pollution in environmental justice communities. So making all school buses electric will help reduce pollution. Our children are forced to breathe, thereby reducing health impacts of poor air quality, such as asthma, which is at epidemic levels in many of our communities. Not only will we be directly improving the health of kids, but we'll also be reducing fossil fuel emissions that contribute to our climate crisis.
Great, thank you. Next up, I'd like to welcome Jasmine from Earth Justice.
Hi, thank you all so much. My name is Jasmine and I'm with Earth Justice. Earth Justice is a nonprofit public interest environmental law organization. At our core, we are committed to zero. We know that zero emissions have the power to transform our communities and improve air quality. We're committed to replacing all polluting fossil fueled bus fleets with far cleaner and safer zero emission buses. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And last up, not least though, is Ian from Jobs to Move America.
Hi, I'm Ian from Jobs to Move America. Jobs to Move America works to transform public spending to build a fair economy and healthy neighborhoods. We believe that we can have a cleaner environment and good jobs where they're needed most. School buses play a crucial role in getting the city's children to school safely, but the fossil fuel burning buses we have now are also harming the health of our children and all New Yorkers who live in environmental justice communities. We're excited to work together to rapidly transition to electric school buses in New York City to bring clean air and good jobs to our communities.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. And next up, we have a couple messages from a couple of our elected officials who are supportive of the campaign. So I'm going to hand it over to Carlos.
Thank you, Angela. So first and foremost, I'm going to introduce Councilmember Rodriguez, who represents the 10th Council District. And as the chairman of the Transportation Committee, he has prioritized pedestrian safety and transportation expansion to communities that need it most. He too is a co-sponsor for Bill Intro 455, and now here he is.
I'm very proud to support the Clean Bus Coalition that is working so hard together with the League of Conservation Voters to be sure that all buses in New York City are electrified. As a former teacher, as someone that's been working with the Black, Latino, Asian, and working class children, I know the importance to be sure that our students are put in buses with good quality air. It's started being said over and over. There's a correlation or lack of quality air in many parts of our city, and asthma and obesity. Therefore, let's work together to be sure that we pass this bill and electrify our buses. Vamos a trabajar juntos para que los autobuses que llevan a los estudiantes de la ciudad de Nueva York todos sean eléctricos, que tengan aire puro para que nuestros niños no se enfermen.
Okay. Then I would also like to next introduce Councilmember Kalos, who represents the 5th Community District in Manhattan and currently serves as chair of the Contracts Committee. Councilmember Kalos is a committed advocate for improving New York City's public schools and is also a co-sponsor of Intro 455. Mr. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos, for hosting and leading us. I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos. That's at Ben Kalos on social media. I want to thank you all for having me, and it's a pleasure to join you for Children's Health Day as we fight to electrify our city's school bus fleet for the health of our children and the environment. Last term, I was chair of the Committee on Governmental Operations, where I oversaw the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which no one's ever heard of except for the fact that they're like the most massive agency responsible for our city's fleet of, I believe, tens of thousands of vehicles. It may even be something like 35,000 vehicles, where we pushed to make all the vehicles hybrid. And as we do that, we also need to make sure we get to a full electric fleet where we can actually have solar top of every city building, which we also worked on, and can just charge them. And that is the kind of world I want to live in. So I want to thank the New York League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, Julie Tai, New York Lawyers for Public Interest, We Act for Environmental Justice, 350BK, North Brooklyn Neighbors, Earth Justice, and as the author of the resolution declaring a climate emergency here in the city of New York, we are the largest city to do so. London had done it first, but we're bigger, so there. I just want to thank everyone for doing this work around the Clean Bus Coalition. There are nearly 40,000 school buses in New York State that run on diesel fuel, which emits toxic chemicals that pollute our air, harm public health, and contribute to climate change. And quite frankly, it is those fumes that whenever I rode a school bus as a kid always made me feel quite nauseous. The pollution is actually palpable. You can taste it, and it is actually nauseating, or at least for me. I don't know if anyone on the chat had similar experiences growing up and having difficulty with getting physically sick from pollution. With the current state of the pandemic, students rely less on school buses, as many families have either partially or fully opted for remote learning. This change, though temporary, has given us a unique opportunity to clear air pollution and advance this bus electrification agenda as much as possible before in-person learning resumes. That said, you have the full support of my office in this mission. I'm happy to work with you to push this initiative forward until we can achieve full electrification of New York City school buses, including the 10,000 privately owned buses. And once we do this, I hope you'll join me in electrifying the city's entire fleet of vehicles. And my hope is that no child ever be exposed to harmful diesel pollution while riding to school in the same way I was. And that we can really get to a place where, starting with the government, we're going to zero emissions, all electric, and we can do so in the private sector too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Angela?
Great, thank you so much, Councilmember. We really appreciate you being here and for your support. Next up, we are very excited to release our first coalition document today at this launch. So thank you all for being here for this. Our 2020 to 2021 agenda lays out why we are fighting for electric school buses and what we are asking for. Here it is. You'll see the visual of the document here. This will be available as an electronic document on New York LCV Education Fund's website. So that is at nylcvef.org/cleanride4kids. And we will send it to everyone who registered for the event today. We will likely send it tomorrow. But there are a couple things that we want to highlight from the agenda to give you a little preview. So if you could change the slide, please. Great. So first, you just heard from our current coalition members, but broadly speaking, this coalition is a partnership of groups who are fighting for clean and safe school busing for New York City students. This includes environmental organizations, labor groups, advocates for students with disabilities, transit groups, environmental justice organizations, and New York City students and their parents. We are looking for new members. So if you're interested in joining us, please reach out to me. My email is here on this slide. It's also on our website. We want you to join us. So to talk a little bit about why we are fighting for school bus electrification, we heard a little bit already, but I'd like to welcome Jenny from NYC. And you can go to the next slide too.
Hi, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us in this very exciting, very special moment. Why are electric school buses important? Electric school buses are very important. We are thinking about the health and safety of children children who ride school buses, especially children with disabilities, are at a higher risk of asthma. And asthma being one of the leading causes of school absenteeism, it is important that our New York City children, anyone who rides the school bus, is able to ride a bus with clean, fresh air. Diesel pollution contributes to low air quality, especially when buses are idling in front of schools. Not only are children at risk, but anyone walking by, individuals in the communities. This issue is so important. We really need to think about the health and safety of everyone who not only rides the school bus, but who is in close proximity to the school bus. Equity. School bus depots are mainly housed in environmental justice communities, which the majority of them are communities of color and low-income communities. Because of this, the diesel school buses, it hits communities harder than others. This is one of the leading causes of environmental racism. Why do these communities have to bear the brunt of diesel emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, just toxic fumes that school buses emit? We need to make sure that these communities, especially these communities, are given the same equity, are given the same right as all other communities. We should all be thinking about, and we should all be fighting for, making sure that every city, every community in New York City breathes clean, fresh air. And of course, climate change. Poor air quality is one of the biggest contributors of climate change. The transportation sector in New York City is responsible for 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. That needs to change. We need to begin to think about cleaner air. We need to begin to think about electrifying our transportation. Mayor de Blasio, in his executive order this past February, committed to electrifying the city's fleet by 2040. However, that did not include school buses. Calls for encouragement of adoption to the plan were in his executive order when it came to private and contracted fleets. We need to change that. We need to make sure that school buses are mandated to be electrified. And I don't think it could be stated enough. We need this for our children. We need this for the health and safety of our children. They continue to ride in these school buses and continue to breathe in diesel air, toxic fumes. Low-income communities and communities of color continue to bear the brunt of these school buses being housed in their communities. Imagine a school bus just idling there as it's ready to go. Imagine these individuals walking by as these school buses are just idling there. We need to make sure that we as a coalition and you as a community, that we continue to fight to make sure that we all share responsibility to creating a more equitable environmental system. And it begins with our school buses. It begins with our children.
Great, thank you, Jenny. The next slide actually shows a map of the distribution of school bus depots. I don't know how well folks at home can see that, but we're happy to share it with anybody who wants to look a little bit further into this point of the siting of electric school bus depots, or not electric school bus depots, of school bus depots, and where they're located around the city. It's pretty striking. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what will the coalition do to address this problem? Well, first, as I mentioned already, we're growing our coalition. We're looking for new members. We would really love to have more parents and teachers and those who are directly impacted by diesel pollution join us. So reach out to us. We want to hear from you.
We also want to fight for pilot programs. New York City and the Department of Education were supposed to roll out a electric school bus pilot program at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year. That didn't happen. These pilot programs are important. We need to figure out, do these work? We need to figure out the routes. We need to make sure that we know what's happening with these school buses. And the perfect way to do that is through a pilot program. We need to make sure that these pilot programs are equitable. We need to make sure that that the routes for these pilot programs prioritize environmental justice communities and also prioritize students with disabilities. Students with disabilities ride the buses longer than general education students. They are on school buses for hours at a time. And so they are the ones who are also the most affected, breathing in these toxic fumes. So we need to insist and we need to fight for equitable access, ensuring that the roots of these pilot programs are in environmental justice communities and communities of color. And as well, making sure that all of our children, especially our children with disabilities, have the access and have the opportunity to breathe in clean air.
Great. And the last thing we're going to do, or it's going to be throughout, oh, actually we have one more, if you can just go back on the slide. Okay. So pushing for the phase out of diesel and all fossil fuel school buses in New York City by 2040. If you think of an end goal, that is the end goal. There is a bill in the City Council, Carlos mentioned it before, Intro 455, that would phase out diesel school buses in New York City by 2040. We all support this bill along with the majority of the City Council and hundreds, if not thousands of New Yorkers. The Volkswagen settlement at the state level and state funding and federal funding can help support this transition. We do need more investment in electric school buses, but we can do this. We just need to take a step in the right direction. We also support any other solutions that will help this phase out happen and incentivize going electric. For example, we would support an executive order regulating the purchase of new fossil fuel buses. Maybe we can't buy all electric right now, but we shouldn't keep buying these diesel buses. So lastly, what can you do? Now we can go to the next slide. We hope you'll get involved, and to tell you how you can get involved, I'd like to welcome Sonal from WE ACT.
Thank you. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved, and Angela already mentioned many times how much we want folks to be a part of our coalition and join us. But we also have another really easy, quick way you can get involved right now, and that's just the beginning. You can click the link that will be posted in the chat, and you can send a message already written, but you're also free to kind of edit it in any way you want and personalize it however you feel. You can send a message to your city council member, Speaker Corey Johnson, and Mayor Bill de Blasio automatically. If you just follow this link, it'll take you, honestly, 1 minute. It took me maybe 30 seconds total if you don't personalize it, but you can always spend as much time working on it as you'd like. And so we would really like anyone in this chat, everyone to send that message to remind our city council members that we're here, that we care, that we are a group of people that has power to ask for the things that we want for the future of our children, especially on such an important day. So please join us by sending that, clicking the link in the chat and getting involved in this really easy step, but we hope you stay involved with us even beyond that.
Great, thank you. Yes, everybody click the link and take the action. Next up, we are moving on to the next portion of our event, and I'm going to hand it back over to Jenny to introduce our next set of speakers.
Thank you, Angela. Now for this portion of the event, we are going to hear from community members on why electric school bus is so important. First, I want to introduce Amy Ming Tsai from the Citywide Council for District 75, and she is also chair of their busing committee. Hi, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, we've done this partnership for quite a while. I think a little more than a year and a half. Last year, 2019, I think that when everything had come down with issues on busing, we really wanted to make things happen for the 21st century. Being available to electrifying our buses really gives an opportunity for our children to have access, a better quality, a transparency of a future, and the equity is there as well. So District 75 is who I represent and advocate for. Our district is the most vulnerable in the city. There are children with health issues, medical issues, cognitive issues. And so these children ride the buses early on in their life, from 2 years and older, from early intervention and all the way up to even past 21 years old. So many of our children ride long days on buses to get across from borough to borough, across from their borough to another. And so it's really heartening to hear that our children are sitting in these buses that are so diesel fueled. They're not safe, they're not healthy. Obviously, you know, through years of breathing into these bad fumes, they cause asthma issues. Children that have never had asthma issues. And also children that live on on a daily basis in the community. They are as well breathing the air that these buses are being idled. So I think it's really important that not just for students with disability, not students that ride these buses, but for all children and for all the community individuals, it's really important. And it really gives an opportunity for those Black and Brown and communities of color, children that live in poverty, who really ride these buses constantly and are around these buses day in, day out, morning, evening, and night. So I really push that everyone come and campaign with us to make sure that the pilot program is a great initiative to start off, so that as we continue this pilot program, we can make better improvements. And for us not to start anytime sooner than it is with the devastating issues that we're going through pandemic, I think it's important that this needs to begin as soon as possible. And I just want to thank City Council for putting this into sponsorship, because it's really important. I know there was a bit of a delay. We were very excited last year, but you know, moving forward, this will make a huge change to our following 22nd century. But thank you, Jenny, and thank you for all the coalition members for giving this opportunity to speak for D75 and for all the students with disabilities that ride the bus every single year. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We all know how important school transportation is, especially for students with disabilities, and we hope that by electrifying the school bus fleet, we can give them a better future. Next, I want to introduce Amanda Hout from United We Stand of New York.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, everyone. Thank you for putting this panel together. Thank you for the coalition, putting this coalition. I don't know a lot about, first of all, let me just introduce myself, apologize. So my name is Amanda Hout, and I'm from United We Stand of New York. We are a not-for-profit, community-based parent resource center. And what I do is I provide advocacy to families from birth to age 26 with regards to more specifically around special education. So when I'm looking at this issue in terms of like the diesel fuel and really electrifying the bus fleet, I'm all for it, because I'm looking at it to the extent of how is it that, you know, when we think about children and how long some of them may be sitting on these buses. Some of them are sitting on these buses for 3 hours at a time. So if you're doing 3 hours times, 5 days, it's 15 hours, give or take, right? And in my head, it's like when you look at it long term, it's basically affecting their health and can be affecting the way that they come into the schools and want to be able to get into classrooms or ready to work or any of that. Because if you're not feeling well, especially for the students who do have asthma or do have underlying concerns, health concerns, if you're not feeling well, you're not really going to push yourself or want to be pushed to do something. And so in my eyes, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about the law, Individuals with Disability Education Act, and how the law really goes into providing students with free and appropriate public education. And I'm thinking about how are these buses or the fleet that the Department of Education is using, how is it really impacting the free and appropriate public education? Yes, we want the services. Yes, we're going to get those services, but I don't believe that it needs to be on the back of being sick or getting sick because of the long-term effects of sitting on these buses for hours at end if there's no traffic, to do that, to get the free and appropriate public education. And so I don't know a lot. I am actually really interested in joining the coalition and learning more and pushing it out there, because I do, on my end, I'm feeling like it really affects the students when it comes time to learning and when it comes time to being in the buildings and giving their all. And so I am happy and I'm learning a lot from the ones that have spoken, and I can't wait to hear from everyone else. So thank you so much for this time. And I am interested and looking forward to what else is going to be happening.
Thank you, Amanda. I don't think anybody could have put it better, what you said about IDEA and ensuring that free and appropriate education for students with disabilities includes not getting sick on the bus. And now, last but definitely not least, we have Sarah Catalinato from Parents to Improve School Transportation.
Good afternoon. Well, we know that air pollution causes all kinds of bad health outcomes, from asthma onset to premature birth. These diesel school buses emit pollutants such as fine particulate matter. Harvard has just found that living in a place with just 1 more microgram per cubic meter of that matter increased the chance of death from COVID-19 by 8%. Chancellor's regulations allow a child on a special education or shelter route to ride the bus up to 4 hours per day. The folks who work these buses are on them even longer. Many kids need busing to access an education, as has been said, but it must be safe for their lungs too. We in Parents to Improve School Transportation can't wait for the yellow bus to go green. In winter, electric buses could stay on while idling, keeping our children warm. In summer, electric buses could roll down the streets without soiling the air. School districts that have reduced diesel fumes of their bus fleets even saw student test scores improve. Our children deserve a change to protect their health and environment today and to guard against climate change tomorrow. That's why PIST NYC supports the Clean School Bus campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And we are going to give it back to Angela.
Hi, thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much, Amy, Amanda, and Sarah. That was amazing to hear your support and your stories and your involvement in this work. We're really grateful that you were able to be here today. And yeah, so we're going to move on to the Q&A portion. We're ahead of schedule, which like really never happens with events. So we might actually end up letting everybody out of here a little early, which I'm sure nobody will complain about. We do have a couple questions that I'm going to field and send out to all of our coalition members so we can get everybody involved. So if all of our coalition members want to turn their video back on, we can do a little Brady Bunch box world here and get the Q&A going. Awesome. So just a quick reminder while everybody's coming back on video, if you haven't asked a question, feel free to send one in the Q&A feature or even in the chat. We'll be watching everything. And yeah, there's still time to ask your question. So the first question I will throw out to everybody, but we'll start. I think I'll start this over with Ian because it you might want to kick it off the answer, but in terms of school bus drivers and how they might be impacted, I think they are on the bus longest out of everybody, considering they drive the school bus. Obviously, electrifying school buses would benefit their health as well. I guess, can you speak to how receptive school bus drivers are or are not to school bus electrification, if you know, and how we can get them involved in this coalition?
That's a great question. I can't speak for them, but I do know that the bus depots are really, really polluted by diesel fumes. And so it really does affect the drivers as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay. Next. Oh,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
May I speak?
It's all you, Sarah.
Thank you. Well, at the same time that we were attending there was an attempt for a worker cooperative with a pilot with about 4 buses. So that was one thing. And there was also, I was looking over my notes from that, and there was also, I know with the largest school bus union, the ATU 1181, they were part of some rallies to promote this, I guess, before it passed in the city council. I think they have a lot on their mind right now. But whatever we get, we're happy to pass along. And there's a lot of individual drivers and attendants on our social media that we're in conversation with all the time too.
Great, thank you. Sonal, did you want to add anything?
No, I was just calling attention to Sarah wanting to speak.
Okay, the next question is for everybody, and I'm curious how everybody feels about this. We got a great question. Is 2040 really the earliest we could aim for when thinking about a fully electric school bus fleet in New York City? Just to give a quick quick answer, but I want to hear from all of our members. Electric school buses right now are really expensive, and they're more than double. Some of them are triple the cost of a regular diesel school bus. And so this is a barrier to school bus electrification. We want to start with the oldest buses first, because those are the most polluting, and work our way towards the whole fleet. I did mention that there is funding available to support fleets in school bus electrification. It's not going to be enough to cover the full New York City fleet, so we need investments from elsewhere, and we need some political will as well, and recognizing that the health of our kids is more valuable than anything else. So while there isn't maybe a financial or a number on that, that it's important. But I'd like to hear from other people about 2040 as a goal. Are we shooting too low, or should we be trying to get more now? And we'll start with Jenny, because she's smiling at me.
Honestly, my opinion, I think 2040 is too far to electrify the school buses. Obviously, this is a pressing issue, and we need to start with something. And I think the pilot program would be a good stepping stone to maybe electrifying the school buses quicker. If we can have a pilot program in place, if we can show that these electric school buses work and that they can do the same routes as diesel buses, if we can, have the infrastructure in place, if we can show how, the battery life of these school buses, if we can show that they have a long battery life,
I think that goes a long way in persuading either council members or the public at large that in the short term, yes, school buses are very expensive, but there is a cost benefit in the long run, especially when it comes to maintenance of these buses and taking care of these buses. And again, it's not only good for the environment, but it's good for the economy. You know, it creates jobs. So I think that I think our first step would be to kind of pushing a pilot program, honestly. Like if we can push a pilot program and we can kind of show that, you know, this is a good investment, that may go a long way.
Yeah, does anybody else want to add anything?
I do. I think that it should be 2021. With everything that's going on, this pandemic, clearly this pandemic has shown so much in regards to how the pollution and the air quality has been better when everyone had to stay at home. So if a pandemic forced our hand to stay home and then the air quality started to shift, I don't see why. I agree with the pilot program, and I think that it should kick in, you know, start planning for it now, and then 2021, push it out on a small fleet at least to try it out. In the specific areas, is there a specific area? Because maybe when you're doing the breakdown on the cost efficiency, and when you're doing the breakdown on how overall this will look, if you look at a small area to begin with, then maybe politicians will jump in because it's not overwhelming. Like there's so much that's going on. So it's a pressing matter, but we don't want to overwhelm. We want to be able to get somewhere started quickly. And so I think that while you're talking about that plan, identifying a specific area to start off with, and pretty much do connect the dots, because a lot of people, well, anyway, I'm not going to go into that because I could get but connecting the dots and kind of like figuring out how this can work for 2021, what can be done. Could it be, you know, phase one would be identifying a fleet to start off with, identifying a neighborhood and how many, you know, what have you, and then jumping from there. But I think to start the process, 2021.
Thanks, Amanda. And before we go to the next question, Amy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I totally am echoing both of them, especially where Jenny had mentioned that, you know, 2040 sounds like a great time for funding to be in place and for the system to be in place with all electrifying buses. But again, you know, I serve the most vulnerable in the city, and we serve the entire city, not excluding any borough. And so for us, we have seen a lot of the, you know, the worst qualities in buses, the worst buses that are, you know, run 30, 40 years, idling in the middle of a highway, broken down. And these kids are sitting in the buses, you know, smelling all this fume that's happening on the highway with other cars and with this bus being on idling. So, you know, as you see in, you know, the demographics all over the world and what country has a vast of pollution, it really affects the health of an individual, especially a young child that may be, you know, very healthy, and then years end up with asthma because of diesel fuels and because of these fumes. And so I think that, you know, us pushing it closer to this, you know, this century versus the mid of the century is more realistic. And it really happens better for the health of all our communities and this climate change that this global issue has been talked about in the last few years. And I think giving an opportunity for a pilot program to start off just even a little bit, either maybe, like you said, the buses that are the most oldest and the most broken down ones, maybe a community that really is devastated the most may be served for that. And so kind of giving an opportunity to start off one by one in stages so that we can better improve if we feel that there is something that's not enough. So, I speak for my community that are the most vulnerable, and the ones that are unfortunate that has this access throughout the day, and need this access and better quality. So thank you so much. I mean, I think that it is definitely a funding, but if City Council can have more push within their fellow council members, it would definitely be a great support for the community of New York.
Great, thank you so much. This next question, I'm going to throw over to Anthony to talk a little bit about sort of compounding air pollution and how diesel, we're talking here about diesel school buses today, but there's a lot of other air pollution causes, and some communities, get stacked on top of each other, and the effects are even more devastating. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe in the context of the community that you work in?
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely true for Greenpoint, Williamsburg. Not only do we have legacy industry, which has emission issues. There's roadways, major roadways like the BQE that runs right through the neighborhood. But then we also have a lot of like high-rise development, which causes other types of particulate pollution that cover the neighborhood. And as we're part of the coalition because we're home to a bus depot. So the combination of those things really deeply impact asthma and other respiratory issues in the community. And to electrify buses will just kind of like knock one peg down as we continue to fight to clean the air in other ways.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Right, we're not going to solve the problem, unfortunately, with electric school buses. There's a lot of work that needs to be done electrifying our whole transportation sector and heavy-duty fleets, and addressing, the siting of some of these facilities and cleaning up some of these older facilities that continue to pollute neighborhoods. But maybe if we have some more electric school buses on the road, we can reduce exposure. And particularly the exposure that our children are having. Okay, so I have another question here from the audience that I will throw out, and anybody can answer this one. And I think it's a little bit TBD, so we'll see how everybody answers this question. Can we talk about how this coalition works together, and if a parent group or individual wants to get involved, how can they get involved? What are some of the ways that individuals can get involved in the work? And I'm gonna, anybody who wants to jump in as a coalition member, maybe Jasmine, we haven't heard from you yet. Not to put you on the spot, but anybody. I think the first step, if you are an individual, would be to contact your local elected officials and reach out to us. And then we can take it from there. But I'd love to hear if other members have anything to say.
Yeah, there's a weekly, well, the coalition has been having monthly coalition Zoom calls. So I think that if you wanted to participate in those, it would be great. You could be helped to strategize and,
Can you just introduce
yeah.
yourself?
Oh,
yep,
hi.
we just heard your voice.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get that video going. Yeah, I'm Joanne from 350 Brooklyn, and I think that the way that coalition has worked over the past 6 or 8 months has been a good way, and we get a Zoom call together about every month, and generally we have an agenda in advance, and we try to start thinking about the concrete steps that we can be taking in that given month of how can we push this. So we need help from more parent groups, more school teachers, more We'd love to hear from the bus drivers themselves. We'd love to hear from the contractors who would be intimately involved, because if you're a bus company and you are contracted to drive school children, then you're going to be a key player in this, because your company will probably be the one that will be purchasing a new electric school bus as soon as that pilot program is functioning. So yeah, I think that whatever interests people have as individuals, they could try to bring those skills and interests to us as as we are forming a bigger coalition. So those are some of my ideas on it. Thanks.
I'd also like to add, on top of what Joanne said, that in our meetings that we have, we're always kind of continually strategizing next steps and what makes sense given the different political moments or different changes that occur. And with that, there's a lot of different things that anyone can lend an expertise on, whether you're someone who's a little bit better at research and can help with that part, or if you're better at kind of being loud to your representatives, like that's a good place you can jump in. Getting other people to participate with us, if you're good at kind of like coalition building work, or just know people that might be interested in being involved, like parents and drivers. So there's just kind of like a lot of different types of expertise that anyone can bring into the coalition. So there's a lot of different things anyone can do, but yeah, it starts with contacting us.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. I think we're going to...
I'd like to add something to that too.
Oh yeah, please.
I think that folks can also, like in informal ways, participate in the work of the coalition by promoting things on social media and documenting. Like if you see a bunch of diesel school buses on the street, documenting that and posting it. I think that we need to kind of create an energy in the larger public consciousness about why this is a problem. And I think anybody can participate at that level.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So before we close it out, does anybody have any final thoughts they want to add to the conversation? I think Amy, you have your hand raised. Yep,
yeah,
go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of add an idea. It's always really important that we educate each other about reasons why it's so important, why we're pushing this, because for many of our parents in District 75, they always say, well, my son is sitting on a bus for 30 minutes in the morning before dismissal and the bus is idling. And, not realizing that there's a health issue when it comes to sitting in a bus 30 minutes and having fumes. And letting the parent know, letting the service provider know in the school, letting admins know in the school, letting the community where the school is, they are aware of these issues and not just about a bus idling. I think just spreading the word of educating people is really important. And that's when people have an open eye on what the real issue is, because we are talking about climate change in this nation. We're just not talking as much of it because we're not as educated in that level. And I think just walking down a block and telling people, look, if New York City is so congested with buses and cars, if you're to resort to riding a bicycle, that's a better way to prevent from more pollution happening. And so letting people know and educating them through campaign.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Amy was saying. I believe that education is key in anything. You can't do anything without understanding and somebody teaching you about it. There are PTIs, parent training and information organizations. There are CPRCs, which is the one that I am, Community-Based Parent Resource Center. And you going and reaching out to these organizations and other community-based organizations that are connected and can host workshops to start that discussion about just health in general, and then adding it in and having people come in from that field to talk about it. Also using, you know, the PTAs and having them get involved and having a conversation around that. Specifically, if it's like, you know, maybe a one-to-one type of thing. If you are a teacher and you are involved in this coalition, if it's a one-to-one type of thing and you know that your student does have a lot of respiratory concerns or what have you, and then teaching from that point also. So I agree 100%. And I do think that educating and reaching out to the community-based organizations, it should and can help.
Great, thank you so much. That's exciting. And we look forward to you joining the coalition, Amanda. So we should touch base about that afterwards. So we're at 5 o'clock. I just wanted to thank everybody so much for coming and attending and for your attention and for sticking around for the whole thing. And to all of the coalition members and our guests here today for participating. We're really excited to officially launch this coalition and to officially launch our 2020 to 2021 agenda. And we will be sending that to everybody in the email that we send when we thank you for signing up and for attending. And again, please just sign up for our mailing list. It's New York LCV's mailing list, but you'll be hearing from the coalition through there about next steps you can take and about updates on the campaign. And then don't forget, Carlos has to remind you of one important thing.
Yes, I just put it back in the chat. Please, everyone, remember, if you can, contact your council member, contact the mayor, contact the speaker. It's really all of you that came to watch this launch that will make a difference and will actually get these school buses to be electrified.
Great. So if we can just give a virtual round of applause for our panelists and everybody for coming. Thank you again, and please stay tuned.